Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew, and this is the Who Dat Discussion, a New Orleans Saints podcast where we talk about all Saints news, opinions, and reactions. And this is our first live stream. I know I did start one just like a little bit before, but it just kicked me off right away. So I'm sorry about that. If that any disconvenience to anybody, but this is gonna be our first live stream. So basically, how this is going to work is basically we're going to go over some Saints news, as there were a lot of Saints news this week. By the way, I just got to give a shout out to FieldGuy316. His YouTube channel is great. I was going on his channel for a while when he was doing a lot of live streams, and now I'm happy to see that he popped in on here. But how this is going to work, we're going to talk about some Saints news, as there was a couple of things of Saints news this week, as the Saints did sign a couple of running backs in Buck Allen and Matthew Days, as well as some Gerald McCoy news, as the Saints may not be in on him anymore, which is I think kind of interesting because when you look at it, I feel like when you look at it, the Saints, they could have been on him, but they weren't, and I think that is kind of interesting when you look at it here, because McCoy, look, he's one of those players, as I said on the last podcast, he is a 3-tech that the Saints already have a ton of 3-techs, especially when Sheldon Rankins is back. And do the Saints you really need another 3-tech, or would they move a couple to the 1-tech position, which I think was kind of interesting too, because when you're looking at it, the Saints, they do have Rankins, Davenport, Rankins, Onyemata. There, sorry about that. They also have Mario Edwards, who can play the 3-tech and also defensive end, and then also they also have in the 1-tech position they have Edwards, excuse me. There, now I'm blanking on his name. Malcolm Butler. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's okay, field guy. I know you went down for a little bit, but I think there wasn't really much Saints news in that time period, so I think it's fine. I saw you've been active on the channel you're on right now. That's been cool. I think you're over 500 subs. That's really good there. But I think this is going to be more of an informal thing. We're gonna talk about some Saints history. Maybe we'll get into it. I want to hear about more people. How long they've been a Saints fan. I'm pretty young, so I've been only a Saints fan really since like the 05 days, 04, and then since then, really like the best part of Saints history, I guess. But I want to hear what you guys got to say on that, and then also the Saints news, because I think there was a decent amount. They did sign Buck Allen, as I said before. I think we're gonna get onto that first, then we'll move on to Matthew Days and maybe a little more into the Gerald McCoy stuff. So first with Buck Allen. Buck Allen, look, he's an NFL player. He is I guess he's kind of a seasoned vet at this point. I think he's 5 years in. This will be his 5th year. So for a running back standard, that's definitely, you're in your prime, you're ready to go. His best year was in 2017, where he had 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, and also had 46 receiving catches, which is also good stuff. He had 6 touchdowns that year. So that is really good. Last year, he didn't have the best of years. He kind of got replaced. And look, the Ravens decided not to sign him, and now he's going to come in. He's going to probably try to battle for that 3 role that the Saints are looking at, and then we'll see what happens there. He's going to be working with Dwayne Washington and battling with Dwayne Washington probably for that 3rd spot. Same with Matthew Days, probably the best out of the 3. Probably you're looking at special teams from these guys and seeing which what they can do there. But I do think Allen, I like Buck Allen. I think he could be a player that comes in here, does a really good job. He was really like an up and down year. First year in 2015 was really good. He had 500 yards only on 137 attempts, 4 yards a carry. He had 45 receptions. 2016 he got hurt. 2017 he comes back, has a really good year, as I said. 2018 has a bad year. So as you see, really up and down sort of a player, there. But I do like Buck Allen. I think he's that type of player that can come in here and, he can give us depth, especially, let's say Latavius Murray goes down or Alvin Kamara goes down. He could come in there and probably fit both roles that these players are trying to fill. Matthew Days, so he is probably an unknown name that many Saints fans won't know. He's, the kind of guy, look, he was in 2017, been a lot of practice squads, but he was only recorded stats in 2017 with the Browns as he had 5 rushes for 13 yards in, he played all 16 games as, that special teams type player. I think that's, really, good stuff there. Thank you, Field Guy. I think in 3 episodes, it was really 3, a span of a couple of episodes, and, the subs just went up. I think it was during the free agent week when I think I did 4 or 5 straight videos, and then people really enjoyed it. It was a lot of content. That's why I want to put out a lot of content. I feel like the live streams are kind of easy to put out, and I like hanging out with you guys. So that should be good. I just kind of have to get used to the live stream setup. Also, I want to get video involved too, but I couldn't do that for the first one. I'm trying to get it for next week. So hopefully we'll have video by the time of next week and that stuff, because I had a spot set up. I have a couple of Saints memorabilia spots where I have a Drew Brees signed picture and a couple of things from the 2009 season, and I just couldn't get all the camera stuff technology. So I'm hoping I can get that by next week. I'll be working on it, so that's really good stuff there. That's a Big Ben Smith. And look, when getting back to the Saints running back situation, I do think that, look, I like Buck Allen over Days. Days just doesn't really have that much experience. When you look at it, it's he's got a lot of that special teams experience, while Buck Allen has a lot of actual running experience, running back technique experience. He's a better blocker. So I think that can all come into play there for him. In 2018, he was a punt return player on the special teams with San Francisco. He was between the practice squad and the actual 53-man roster for the San Francisco 49ers there. I think that's really good for the running backs. I think the Saints kind of know what they're doing for the running backs. I hope you guys agree. But I think Kamara, Murray, those are going to be your 2 guys. I think Kamara probably will get more of the touches. And if one of them gets hurt, Buck Allen could probably come in and do a really good job there. So I think now we're going to move on to the Gerald McCoy stuff, as I got in earlier with it. But look, the Saints, when looking at Gerald McCoy, Saints not really in it anymore, which is kind of interesting to put out, because first the Saints were really in on Gerald McCoy. It looked like Drew Brees and him were really good friends. They were like, if Gerald McCoy gets cut, the Saints will jump all over it, and that wasn't the case. So I'm just kind of wondering here if what happened in that middle, because now he's really down to 3 teams, and that's going to be the Browns, Ravens, and Panthers, which I think was kind of interesting. He wanted to win, so why would he go to the Panthers? That just doesn't make much sense. The Saints must have not contacted him or something like that, which I wouldn't be surprised about, but I don't think that I just don't think that the Saints would have not gotten to Gerald McCoy. I just don't see that. It's kind of puzzling because Gerald McCoy, he was such good friends with Brees and stuff, and then they don't even bring him in for a visit, which is kind of interesting. Who dat, Jerry? I think that really when you're looking at it, the Saints, I'm fine with them not signing McCoy. As I said earlier, I think when you bring in what the Saints have already, hopefully Rankins comes back after 6 weeks. You're hoping that that's the point. Maybe you sign someone in the middle to put the stopping gap, or as whatever they say. But you do have Onyemata, who may not even get suspended for this, which I think is kind of interesting there. So we don't really know what his scenario is going to happen, and then we also don't know the scenario for Rankins as well. So is there a couple question marks? Yes, but we do have Mario Edwards, who was a situational player for the Giants last couple of years. I have a lot of Giants fans, and they said that he's a good plug-and-play type player that can come in there and play. Look, the McCoy, I think what happened with McCoy is that, I don't know what happened, because, look, I was fine with the Saints getting McCoy, but I said that the Saints, I was fine if the Saints didn't get McCoy, because I feel like they have a lot of depth in the defensive tackle area. I don't think they need help in defensive tackle. They really need more help in defensive end area. And look, there's not really many players that the Saints could go after at this point. So when you're looking at McCoy and what he brings to the table, it's a lot of run stopping. Yes, he does get sacks. He has 6-7 sacks, but I think he's better on the run stopping when you could maybe get an impact player in defensive end. I think the Saints will try to do that at the trade deadline. I think that's a possible way that the Saints could acquire a player there. But anyways, I do think that they have a lot of depth, and I think that when looking at it, I do think that our defensive line is going to be one of the best in the league. I really like what Cam Jordan can do. I think every Saints fan knows what Cam Jordan wants to do there. And also, I think Marcus Davenport should come into his own and have a really solid year, as well as, yeah, exactly. I agree with Field Guy there. I think we're fine without him, and I think we'll go in. I think we're fine with Davenport. I think we're fine with Jordan. And in the middle, when you have Rankins and Brown by like week 8, that's better than what they had last year. And the defensive line was dominant last year. You also got to look how impactful our linebackers were last year with Demario Davis and co. So overall, really good job by the Saints they did do a really good job at getting defensive line players, defensive line depth. And then also you do have Mario Edwards in there. And then we're also forgetting about Wes Horton, who in 2017 did have 5.5 sacks. And that's perfect if he can go with Davenport. If he gets 5.5 sacks as well with Davenport, who could maybe give us another 6 sacks. And you're looking at a really solid defensive line there. Maybe that won't happen. Maybe he only gives us 2 sacks, but it's good depth there. Even if he gives us George Johnson type player, if you guys remember him, I think he could be a player like that. Thank you, Jerry. Look, I'm trying this out. We'll see how it works. I'm gonna try to get some. As I said before, I was trying to get like the video, with some the camera and everything, but I just couldn't get the technology for today. I'm gonna try to get it for next week, as I'll probably fiddle around with it during the weekend and stuff like that. But I think with all the Saints news, I want to turn it over to you guys. What do you guys want to hear from us? I do want to talk about one thing, as the offseason is going closer to an end. The Saints will probably be announcing some new Hall of Fame members. Who do you guys want to see get into the Hall of Fame that hasn't already? Maybe some 2009 players, maybe, that haven't gotten in just yet. I know Lance Moore got in last year. Are we going to have some other receivers like Devery Henderson? Does he get in? Robert Meacham? Those type players. I think Marcus Colston may be up for it too. If he wasn't inducted yet, maybe he's up for it this year. But I think that's really interesting because, look, they came up last year too. Who is going to get in and like why? Because are the Saints being even too selective onto who to get? Because look, last year Lance Moore, he was a great player. I'm not going to put anything against Lance Moore, but he never made a Pro Bowl or anything with the Saints. He never made a Pro Bowl period. He was a solid player. He did make a big catch in the Super Bowl. We all know that. He made a big impact on that team. A great locker room guy. Nothing against Lance Moore. Really a great player. But he deserved to be that Hall of Fame type player. And I think that's really up to be said there. I think, do we induct some players from the offensive line? Those are type of players I think you could see there too, because we had a great offensive line. Let me just pull that up, because that offensive line I think was kind of the unsung hero for the Saints in that year, because they were able to protect Drew Brees, and that was when Drew Brees could really throw that deep ball really well. He was slinging it all across the field to Devery Henderson, Meacham, Colston, obviously. This offensive line was one of the reasons that the Saints were in it every year, and I think when looking at it, yeah, he was good in the red zone. He got a lot of great plays, but I didn't really care. Like, I'm fine with him getting in. Look, I love Lance Moore. He was a player that I loved, but in the red zone, he got a lot of touchdowns. That was really good. I think he was good enough probably to make it because he made a couple really big catches in the Super Bowl that helped this team get there. But it's definitely something that people talk about. Will Carl Nix get in? I'm just going over this over the Saints offensive line here. Will Carl Nix, Jonathan Goodwin, Jari Evans, who's with the Saints for a while, and then John Stinchcomb. I think that Jari Evans probably is going to be the first one that gets in. He's look, he was one of our best guards there. He was a steady part of the Saints team. But when I'm just looking at these, maybe I'm going off on a little of a tangent, but looking at this Saints O-line, a lot like our O-line now, young players with a couple of veterans pushed in there with Stinchcomb and Goodwin, like we have with Wofford, and it was Max Unger, but as he retired. So I think that when you're looking at it, they had the young guys on the outside, like the Saints do with their tackle, with Taron Armstead and Jeremiah Bushrod back in 2009. I really like that comparison, so sorry to go off on that tangent, but this, I think it's going to be interesting who the Saints do induct into the Hall of Fame this year, so I thought that was just kind of interesting, something to bring up and talk about a little. I think that when looking at it, just this whole 2009 Saints team, who would get in, who doesn't get in, I think, because when looking at the starters, I don't believe Devery Henderson's in yet. He was a starter from that year. Does he get in? He had 800 yards from that year. He had over 50 catches. Does Devery get in? If Lance Moore got in, wouldn't you think Devery Henderson gets in? Maybe not there. I think that's something to look at. I don't think Shockey gets in. He didn't play enough time for the Saints. I think a lot of those offensive linemen should get in and probably will get in. I think Bushrod will definitely get in once he retires fully, and I think it's like 3 years you have to play for, and then they get into the Hall of Fame. The defense, there are a lot of players I think are in there. I think Vilma's already in there, and Will Smith, the late Will Smith, he is in there as well. How about Scott Fujita, Scott Shanley? Should they be players that go into the Hall of Fame? They're players that both weren't drafted by the Saints, so maybe you want to see them come up. They were obviously huge parts to the Saints Super Bowl run. That I think is really interesting. And then also, just Tracy Porter get in? I think that's a player that we should be looking at. Tracy Porter, look, he had like 3 good years with the Saints and that's it, but obviously he had the amazing interception that I even have a fatted of. Look, he's a player that didn't have prolonged success, but he had a lot of really good years for the Saints, a couple of really good years for the Saints. So does he get in? I think that is really interesting. He had four interceptions that year. I think that is really interesting. Roman Harper, I think he'll probably get in. Darren Sharper, I don't think he'll get in at all, as he's in prison. So I don't think the Saints would give him that honor. But Roman Harper for sure. I think he's coming up. Maybe he gets in. I think that's really interesting stuff, because this roster, it was very, very good. But how many players are you going to put in? I think that's really what the Saints should think about. Perhaps Cedric Ellis, he was a player that the Saints got. But look, I don't think they played long enough for the Saints. Maybe they will get in and they'll surprise me, but right now you're looking at the Hall of Famers. It's going to be Breeze, the Saints Hall of Famers. Colston will be in. Henderson, to me, is a question mark. Depends which way you want to go. Shockey probably won't be. Jermon will be. Carl Nix, he's a player, maybe in, maybe not. He had a couple really good years for the Saints. Jonathan Goodwin probably won't. He was only the Saints center for only a couple of years. Jari Evans probably will get in. John Stinchcomb probably will not. Defensive stars, Charles Grant, I don't know. Is he in? I don't think he's in already. Maybe he gets in there. I don't think he had enough good years. That's kind of the thing there. He's probably in already. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, exactly. I think they kind of would be. A lot of them are all worthy. I think, look, anybody that won the Super Bowl should definitely be in consideration and made an impact. Meacham, I'm surprised that he didn't get him, because I feel like Meacham was a big part of that team, and so was Henderson. Devery and Meacham, that Lance Moore kind of, maybe it was just how the years worked, that Lance Moore got in and ahead of them. But look, I probably would have put Henderson instead of Moore in there, but Moore was a good slot player. You got to put that in mind. He was the player that came in the slot. Did really good job. But when looking at it, I do think that either or probably could have gotten in. Same with the O-line. Look, I think a lot of the O-line should definitely get in for sure. With the Saints there. When you're looking at Charles Grant, he just didn't play that long, and I don't think he'll get it. Look, he had a couple of 10-sack seasons, and he got over 6 sacks 4 times with the Saints. Great at the beginning of his career. and then kind of tailor off. I don't think he's going to be good enough to get in there. I don't think he got in. His last year was in 2009, so I think they would have put him in by now if he was going to get in. Special teams, does Garrett Hartley get in? Another player that probably will, just because his huge kicks, but I could see maybe not, and Thomas Morstead for sure, definitely there. Just going through this roster, it's kind of going down memory lane. Mike Bell, I remember him, who slipped in like the 2-yard line in the Super Bowl that we didn't get in the red zone on. I remember that. Mark Brunell, he did start one game. I do remember that for the Saints. He started one game in 2009. I think it was the last game of the season. That was definitely interesting there. Reggie Bush, obviously, really great player. I think Saints. I think he'll get in. I don't know what you guys think, but I think he'll definitely get in to the Hall of Fame if he's not in it already. But I believe he isn't in, and I think he should be. I think he did enough for this team to get in. Going down the list, Jonathan Casillas, I remember him. He was only a rookie that year. That's kind of interesting there. Cedric Ellis, he was on the defensive tackle. He was really good. Heath Evans, the fullback. Now he's on NFL Network, and he just goes. He loves Drew Brees. He backs him up on everything. I think that's really cool there. Excuse me. There. Anthony Hargrove, defensive tackle. I think that's kind of interesting too. Another player that situational player for the Saints. I think people probably remember him most kind of because he got caught for the bounty, but again, he did get that expunged from his record. So I don't know about that. Malcolm Jenkins, he was a rookie at this point. Another player that won a ring with the Saints, just won one with the Eagles. Goes into the star player, kind of the one that got away from the Saints. All these old names. Bobby McCray. It's really going back to memory lane there. It's really good stuff. Lance Moore, as we said. David Thomas, the tight end. The Saints had a sneaky good tight end group back then. They had Shockey, David Thomas. Really sneaky good stuff. And they also had Streif at that point too, who was kind of playing that fullback / tackle role at that point because he was only the 7th round pick. He did a lot of good things. The back end, I thought was kind of interesting as well. They had a lot of. The back end, Jabari Greer, there. He's a player that he was so good and underrated too. In the 2011, 2013 range, he was really good. Let me just get a quick drink of water. But he was really good in that 2011 to 2013 range. He did a lot of really good stuff because he was, especially in those Rob Ryan defenses, they relied so much on the corners to play one-on-one that he did some really good cover corner work. He was top 10. He was really underrated, and look, he was a great player for the Saints, and I think that not many people see that. So I think he's an unsung hero. He should definitely get in. I don't know if he's in already. Jabari Greer in the Hall of Fame. Let me just look that up real quick, because Jabari Greer, he was a player I think that he deserves to get in to the Saints Hall of Fame, and we'll see if he got in already. But I do think he should be in if he, doesn't already. Hey, he hasn't got in yet. He's let's see, he's into his county Hall of Fame right now. But when looking at, I'm just gonna look at the Saints Hall of Fame website and see how many players from that generation are in right now, because I think that's it's gonna be really interesting to see who's in and who's not. Pierre Thomas, he's in. Lance Moore, he's in. That was really, I think, players that should have been in for sure. They won the Super Bowl, they deserved it. Then Jonathan Vilma, Carl Nix, both players that we said were in, all really good players. Then Will Smith, we know him, really good players. And that's it. That's it for now. When looking at, let's look at other players. Aaron Brooks is in there. That's kind of interesting. Aaron Brooks is in there. That is kind of interesting. What do you guys think about that? Do you think Aaron Brooks should be in the Saints Hall of Fame? Compared to, some people. Look, he wasn't bad. I don't want to say he's bad, and he won a couple playoff games for the Saints, but does he deserve getting in? John Carney, he's in already. LeGroy Glover, he's in. Tom Benson, for sure. Joe Horn, he should be in there. And then it's going back to guys that weren't on the Super Bowl run team. But a couple of, a lot of players. Dalton Hilliard, another player. Look, yeah, exactly. I don't know if Aaron Brooks would be in the same thought. I guess it's, but you're gonna put him in, and then like right now, I mean, I think they'll put a lot of players that won the Super Bowl in there because I'd be really surprised. You know, you have Pierre Thomas gets in, obviously should be, but I don't really. How does it work? Is it every 5 years? I think that's what it is. Every 5 years that the Saints, like you have to be retired for 5 years to be out of it. Let's see. Yeah, you have to be eligible for the National Football Hall of Fame to get into this. So I think that's 5 years. And so Pierre Thomas, that makes sense though. 2013 that he retired in after 2013. That kind of makes sense. 2014, maybe it's 4 years. It's 3 years, yeah. And that makes sense for Pierre Thomas. Yeah, it does. That makes sense for Lance Moore too. Vilma probably, he probably retired in 2014, and now 2017 he got inducted. So that kind of makes really good sense. But this year, so let's see who's up for it out of that 2009 team. Because let's just look when these players retired. Let's look at someone like Devery Henderson, because maybe that, he wasn't eligible yet. Let's look. His last year, Devery Henderson, was in 2012, so he is eligible, and he hasn't been in yet. He played from 2004 to 2012. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think that Devery Henderson should be in? He hasn't been inducted yet, and 3 years. Yeah, it is 3 years on here. Look, I think it's kind of probably a little of both. Look, when you're looking at, I'll give you some players that got in. Look, Lance Moore, Pierre Thomas, both I think longevity. I think it's kind of a combination of both. I think in Morstead for sure I think he'll definitely get in. John Carney got in, so if that gives you for special teams type players, you have guys like Will Smith, I think he was kind of both. He had a lot of impact, a lot of longevity. But Carl Nicks, I believe, let's see how long he was on the team for. I believe he was on for a decent amount of time. I think all these guys that made it with the Super Bowl, they kind of deserved it. But look at Carl Nicks. He was only on the team from 2008 to 2011. I thought that was kind of interesting. In his background, it says that, basically he was a lineman that helped Drew Brees and, become the championship. So that's what they were saying. He was an all-pro on his time with the Saints. So maybe it is an impact because, look, he was only on the team for 3 years, 2008 to 2011, 4 years. And look, he was in his prime on the Saints. So maybe that had something to do with it. But overall, I think maybe he was a player probably for the impact. Pierre Thomas, I think he played for 8 years for the Saints, and we all know what he did. So to me, I think it kind of varies from player to player. I think that let me look exactly what their criteria says. It says that the advisory committee nominations are selected from 2 sources: the media selection and then an advisory committee of inducted Saints Hall of Famers. So one's gonna be by the media guys. So probably guys that were well liked by the media. Maybe that's why Lance Moore got in. He's such a good guy, great character, stuff like that. Maybe the media really loved him. And then the former Saints Hall of Fames. So it's kind of like the both have to kind of agree on type players. The nomination could be for any coach, player, front office player that has been retired from the NFL Football League for at least 3 years. So there's the 3 years thing that Field Guy was saying. And then the advisory committee will submit one recommendation to the media committee. Then the media committee is urged to strongly consider the recommendation of the advisory committee, but there is no obligation. So that's probably that. Look, that media selection is going to happen. That's going to get in there. And then the advisory is going to get in there. The media selection committee will elect one, but no more than 2 people. So on an annual basis, it's only two players. So it's 2 players every year. So I think that maybe that's why Devery Henderson hasn't gotten in yet. So it's really only every 2 years, but accomplishments on the field are used to nominate and select Saints members of Hall of Famers. That is first and foremost. Character off the field is secondary. So maybe that answers your question about longevity or impact. I think that all, it's kind of interesting because let's go back to like a 2016, only one player with Will Smith. 2015 was two with Michael Lewis and Tyronn Hughes. 2014 was Aaron Brooks and John Carney. I'm just surprised Aaron Brooks isn't here, to be quite honest with you. That's kind of like the most surprising. Juice McAllister obviously is in there. Tom Benson, he's in there. Willie Rofe in 2008, Morton Anderson in 2009, Joe Horn in 2010, Sammy Knight in 2011. So those are some players from like the mid-2000s, 90s players that got in with the Saints. And then when you go back even farther, you have guys like Ruben Mays. Even Jim Moore is in here. So I guess, it's not the most selective, but I think, look, it obviously is, because only, you're looking at two players every year only can get in. But I think that is really interesting. So this year, it's going to be two guys from the Super Bowl team, as was 2018, 2017. So who would get in? Maybe this is the year for Henderson. Who are guys that retired in 2015? Because I think that's kind of the main thing there when looking at it. It's Marcus Colston's year. I think, when did he retire? 2016 or 2015? So I think, yeah, so this is Marcus Colston. Marcus Colston probably will be inducted this year because he retired in 2015. So he's going to be one of those spots. So will they induct two receivers? Probably not. So that says something about Devery Henderson, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting there, but Colston I think will definitely get it, and then you're looking at other players also probably will end up getting in as well there. But again, what do you guys think about this? Do you guys think that, I think Colston will definitely get in, but what do you guys think about that? Or any other players that maybe I'm missing? Maybe John Vilma? He's already in already. I'm sorry about that. He was in 2017. How about, Scott Shanley, those type of players? I think that is, somewhere that, the Saints can go and, they could be very successful there. I think also, like, I think that when looking at the Hall of Fame, I think that's kind of, it's interesting because is it really, really hard to get in? And is it really, hard to get in, or is it hard to pick certain players? I think that is kind of interesting because, look, I think some guys have gotten snubbed. Would I have gone Henderson over Lance Moore? I think that's a question. Scott Shanley or Scott Fujita over Vilma for sure. Has Steve Gleason gotten in yet? I think he should be a player that should probably get in. I don't think so, though. I'll look at that, but I think, look, I know that he didn't have the biggest on the field, but off the field, obviously, I think he's had a huge impact to this franchise. I think he deserves to be in one way or the other, but he hasn't been in. So maybe you get maybe Steve Gleason. Look, I'd put him instead of Aaron Brooks. I know maybe people may not want to put him in there, but him instead of Aaron Brooks. Look, Aaron Brooks, nothing against him, but I'll pull up his stats. But really, compared to other players, he's definitely I think he's not better than Archie Manning, and is he better than players like maybe Bobby Hebert? I think that could be more of a interesting topic to maybe discuss. Who do you guys like better between those two guys? But then it's different eras and stuff like that. But he was on the Saints for only 7 years, and in the last year he was the backup to. In last year he didn't play for the Saints. He backed up for the Oakland Raiders. So he wasn't awful with the Saints. When they made the playoffs, he had some. He had a 24-8 year. That was really good. But besides that, nothing good, really. Nothing really that special. He had the best best touchdown to interception ratio in 2003 with the Saints. So he never made a Pro Bowl or anything like that. He did make the playoffs in 2000, and he won a playoff game. Maybe that's why he gets in there for because he won a playoff game. But look, again, he wasn't like amazing in these two playoff games. He ended up with a 60% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's not like the best ever. I mean, good, but it's not the worst too. But to me, those numbers are really pedestrian, and I think guys like Scott Fujita and Scott Shanley, they made big strides to help the Saints win a Super Bowl. So not only win a playoff game, but win a Super Bowl. I think probably bigger impact than Aaron Brooks and those types of players. So to me, I think maybe they should get in over Aaron Brooks. Those are Pro Bowl players. Aaron Brooks never made a Pro Bowl. Look, I think all that stuff should be put into effect there. But look, I think that is very interesting. And again, where do you guys stand on this subject about the Hall of Famers and stuff? It should be coming up soon. It should be pretty soon announcing. I think it should be like in a month, because I think in like July they come out, June, July. But I do think that I think we're gonna get to that. I think we'll see. I think maybe it'll be a little surprise too. When we get to that conclusion, if it's gonna be, it should be Colston for sure. I think everyone agrees on that. But then after that, where will the Saints go from there? So I think we're gonna wrap up this film study. Let's see how long we've been going for it. Unless you have anything else to talk about. Trying to find so about I think this is how long these will probably be. Between 40 minutes, 30 minutes, just talking some Saints. We got to talk about the Hall of Fame. I think that was really cool to start off. And I just want to say thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter at the Who Dat Dis, on Instagram at Who Dat Discussion. If you guys like these film studies, sorry to interject, but if you guys like these, not film studies, if you guys like the film studies or you like the live shows, stuff like that, definitely, tell us in the comments below. Definitely tell me, because I want to hear if you guys really like this stuff, or maybe we'll change to something else. But I think it was a start to something, and I think it was a little with the technical stuff, maybe a little shaky in the beginning, but I think it turned out okay. Is my voice good and everything? I think it should be. It's probably the same as the podcast, I'm hoping. I think that's really what it is. And also, getting used to speaking basically live without, podcast, obviously there's editing that goes involved, same with the film study. So this is really the first one to, go out. It's completely no editing. This is what it is. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Also, we're on Podomatic at the Who Dat Discussion. And also, obviously, we're on here on YouTube. Give this video a thumbs up for me, please. Look, the more thumbs up, the more likes, the more subscribers, the more content we can do, and that's just really helpful. You could find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, basically whatever you listen to your podcast, we are on there. And also, guys, if you have any questions for the podcast episodes, please leave them down below. I'm hoping to get an episode out probably by Friday. I think right now we're going to try to get out 2 episodes a week, starting that up again. And also we're going to throw in some film studies, throw in some live shows like this, and it all should be good there. I think Wednesday's going to be our day. We'll do a live show around probably in Central Time, probably between like 7 and 8, and see how that goes. I think it's a good time because everyone, is probably home, just, probably browsing through YouTube. That should be some good stuff there. But with all that said, I think we will wrap this up. Yeah, that is true. With the dome control, Archie Manning, he didn't have the support, and they had the dome control. Maybe you give Hebert a little, maybe a little step up of Brooks, but Brooks also had some success too. He did win a playoff game, but he had a great team around him. I don't think anyone's gonna deny that, especially right away with Ricky Williams, players like that. It's a thing that I think when looking at Saints history, it's kind of tough because, look, they weren't good for many years, and then obviously now they're doing amazing. I think, keep praying that, knock on wood, that they still are doing good. But before, it's interesting because they didn't have a lot around them, but where should we rank these players? Because should we, put, Hebert over Aaron Brooks? if both are in the Hall of Fame. So, I think that's kind of interesting. But you're right. I think the Dome Patrol was a big part, obviously, of the Seeds getting on the map there as well. But thank you guys for all the support. It's really really great that you guys are watching and hanging out with me, and you chose to hang out with me instead of watching another video or stuff like that. I just really appreciate that. That's why I started the podcast and started the channel and everything. It's just to be with more Saints fans, talk Saints fans. Talking about the Saints for like 45 minutes was 2-3 years ago was something I wouldn't even think of doing. Now I get to go on here, do a couple of live streams and talk some Saints history, obviously talk about Saints news and stuff at the beginning, and talking also with the film studies and all that fun stuff. So I just want to say thank you guys so much. So with all that said, I want to say thank you, finish the deal, and who dat?